Do you want to be an effective leader in your workplace? Here are 10 tips, 10 key ideas for not only being a leader, but being effective in what you do and building effective teams. Before I start on this, I want to highlight one very important lesson. We will fail at this. I think that's a fact. I'm going to talk about 10 things to make you an effective leader, and I can guarantee you there are going to be times when you think back on it and you think, I did that. And there's going to be times when you look back and say, I didn't. I want to encourage all of us to take the lessons that we're going to talk about and apply them and do everything we can every day to be a little bit better at each of these 10 things. And in fact, hopefully what I've just done is demonstrate that very first thing, communicate clearly. When we're working as a team, and if you're a leader, you're leading a team, right? If we're working as a team and we're leading a team, we want to make sure the team understands what we're doing. We want to make sure they understand our goals and our expectations, both for the work that they're doing and the outcome we hope to achieve. We need to communicate clearly. In another video, I talk about the importance of knowing how our words are being received by those around us. What we say isn't always what they hear, and that's as much on us as it is on them. And so we need to make sure we're getting this feedback. So I want to communicate clearly. There's a lesson I learned from a guy named Gary Smalley. He talked about the McDonald's principle. Well, as you're communicating what has to happen, what the goals and objectives are, kind of ask everybody, including yourself, to do the McDonald's principle. For those of you that remember the old school drive-through, where you didn't have a screen that had the menu showing up like you have at Wendy's now, they would repeat it back to you. You tell them, I want a Big Mac, a large fry, and a large Diet Coke, and they would repeat it back to you to make sure they understood clearly, to make sure it was communicated clearly. So lesson number one about effective leadership is communicate clearly and fight for that feedback to make sure that they heard you the way you intended to be heard. Trust me, this is hard, and I fail. Okay, we all have this challenge. The second one is leading by example. Ideally, you want to show them that you are behaving in a way that's the way you want them to behave. That doesn't mean you're going to do their job. I'm sitting here in the room with an intern and our director of marketing who are sitting on the other side of this camera, and we all know I can't do what they're doing. I can't be that example. But what I can try to be as a leader is convey the example of how I want us to behave as an organization, how I believe we should be interacting with others, how we respond when things go wrong. Do I spend 5 hours shouting in a meeting? Or do I try to place blame on somebody? Or do I want my team to focus less on laying blame at the feet of others and focus on what a problem was? I will try to lead by example in that regard. That's one way of leading by example. The other thing to do is empowering your team. Give them the autonomy to do what they need to do. So sometimes that means you have to make sure you were communicating clearly and that you're leading by example so that they can feel comfortable going out and doing what you've tasked them to do, that they feel that you've given them the autonomy to act on the behalf of the organization, not on your behalf, on the behalf of the organization to accomplish what needs to be done. Now, as they're empowered, as they're autonomous and they're going out and doing these things, they're going to come back to you as the leader and say, hey, check, how are we doing? So you need to be a good listener. You need to listen to what they're saying, listen to the feedback they're giving you, and listen to their ideas. Now, listening to their ideas doesn't mean always agreeing with what they say you should do, but it definitely means acknowledging that they're coming to you with ideas, recognizing those ideas, those thoughts, those opinions as valuable to keeping your organization moving. All of that is showing communication. Now, you're doing all of those things, but you need to show empathy as well. What does that mean, empathy? Well, that you understand, that you care, that you can put yourself in their shoes. Maybe you've been in their shoes. Maybe you've experienced the very thing they're talking about and you can have empathy for that. It's very different from sympathy. Sympathy? Oh, I'm sorry. That must be terrible. Empathy. Wow. I know what that's like. I've experienced something similar. By the way, you haven't experienced the same thing. They'll be the first to tell you that. But empathy is knowing where they're coming from and listening to those feelings, understanding and caring about what they're sharing with you. Number 6 is be adaptable. Be willing to change. You may have an idea, you may have conveyed and communicated this clearly that you're going to head in a certain direction. Well, you need to be adaptable though. When they come back to you and go, ooh, boss, this is a terrible thing to do. You may look at it and go, oh, okay, you're right. Maybe I need to do something else. Or maybe you have a great idea and they come to you and go, well, if we're going to do that, we need to do these other things. And you have to say, I had a terrible idea. Be willing to do that. Be adaptable. Pull back from that. Which kind of leads to number 7. This one's tough. Be decisive. Be willing to take action even when the outcome is uncertain. This one's tough. How many of us don't want to do something until we're 100% certain that we're not going to lose money, that we're going to gain sales, that people will show up? Been there. I become more conservative, more risk averse, if you will, the more that's at stake. So when we're making big decisions, I want a little more certainty. You have to be decisive. You have to move forward. We have to be adaptable. We have to do all those other things, but be decisive. Number 8, encourage learning, encourage growth, and help your team become better at what they do and advance their careers. Now, here at the Covation Center, we're a very small organization. So one of the things I've adopted as an attitude for employees is that I want to always be working to make my employees better for their next job somewhere else. Occasionally someone will go, wait, you're going to fire them? I mean, no, that's not what I'm talking about. There's not a whole lot of room to move upward in an organization of 4 or 5 people. That said, I want everyone that works with us to be bettering themselves so that they can do better. And that probably means do better somewhere else. I don't care. I want them to do better. I've heard recently some people say things like some leaders, some managers, whether it's manufacturing or retail, they don't necessarily care about their employees. They're driven by the metrics. I don't think that's true, and it never should be true if you're going to be an effective leader. If you're going to be an effective leader, you need to encourage learning and growth. You need to be empathetic. You need to communicate things clearly because all of these things lead to an effective team. You are an effective leader if you leave behind an effective team. So that gets to number 9. If you've done all these other things and your team is firing on all cylinders, as they say, in that internal combustion engine world, the car is just moving forward great, celebrate success. Take downtime and say, we did this. And occasionally celebrate the outstanding individuals. Recognize and celebrate the success of individual team members. But whatever you do, don't forget to celebrate that the team did well. Now, I add a little piece here compared to a lot of other things I teach. I want to highlight celebrating the success of doing the day-to-day job. Some people want to celebrate the big success. We had a challenge come in. We put out the fires. Oh my golly, we had to do all these things. Well, guess what? If you did your job and you did your job absolutely correct, that's all you did. You just did your job. That's amazing. Doing your job is what we get paid to do, right? We get paid to do our job. So I want to celebrate when we're doing our job right. In fact, if you're having to put out fires, odds are pretty good somewhere along the way you weren't doing your job. So we have to celebrate the wins of doing things right the first time. Finally, and this is the absolute hardest thing to do as a leader, because guess what? We're human. The hardest thing we can do is be consistent. Remember I started off by saying that the biggest lesson out of all of this is we're going to talk about 10 things for being an effective leader, and we're going to realize we don't always do them. That's why the 10th thing is so tough. Maintain a consistent leadership style and approach. Be reliable, be dependable, be the person that your team knows you to be, day in and day out. I'm probably more guilty on this than anything else. I probably come in with inconsistencies. One day I'm in a good mood, one day I'm not. And when that happens, I need to realize what I'm doing. I'm creating uncertainty in the workplace. I'm creating uncertainty with my team. They don't know how I'm going to respond. There's some honesty for you. I get it. And I need to work on this. I want to hear from you. What do you need to work on? What have you found great success in? So here's my challenge for you. I'm going to leave you with 3 challenges. The first one's easy. I want you to take these and write them down, and I want you to pick 2, and I want you to work on them in the next week. I want you to go out there and say, I'm gonna work on communicating and making sure that I'm using the words the way my people understand them. I want to be empathetic. I want to be consistent. 2 or 3 things. The second thing I want you to do is ask for some feedback from your team. Go down this list and tell them, you know what? Number 10 is be consistent, and I realize I'm human. I heard Steve say that. Not all of us are reptilian. I heard Steve say we're all human and we're not consistent. Where am I inconsistent? What do I need to work on? Fight for that feedback from your team. And third, this is probably the most important one of them all. Go down to the comment section below and put your comment in there about where you've seen some of these things work and where you've seen some of these things fail. Share with us your success stories and your failures. Feel free to make up a name. You worked at company XYZ before you went to ABC or whatever. But share your stories. Because guess what? We learn from stories. We learn from each other. And that is what enables us all to be effective leaders. Hopefully this resonates with you, a piece here, a piece there. I look forward to hearing your comments, reading your comments, and don't forget to click like, and don't forget to click subscribe, because we want to continue these conversations with you in the comment section and throughout. I'm Steve Brady. I'm the Executive Director here at the Covation Center, and I look forward to hearing from you.